One of the great glamours or illusions about meditation is that it's something that's done for the self, for relaxation perhaps, for the attainment of peace, to promote spiritual growth. And in fact, all of those can be effects of meditation, but they also express a kind of a self-centeredness about one's spiritual development, don't they? The self-centeredness of the personality, even in matters of spiritual development, is one of the greatest fetters to the soul. Fetters being a word used by the Buddhists, meaning limitations. And in fact, the Buddha said that self-affirmation, the constant reference to and devotion of attention and resources to the interests of the soul, of the separated self, is the cause of all sorrow. Until we give up that devotion to the interests of the separated self, we will suffer. Alice Bailey wrote that the tendency to self-interest is, if anything, waxing at this time. She said that it's the most potent factor in the world at this present time, probably because of the growth of education and the increasing integration of the personality equipment. All of that is good and positive, but it also tends to foster and heighten self-interest and self-affirmation. And thus, she said, there's a critical situation developing between the hierarchy of light and the hierarchy which controls the left-hand path, because they would be very interested in maintaining the selfish self-preoccupation of human beings who are prone to that bent. At the same time, she said that never before have there been so many people who are making real efforts to transform themselves into what she called transmitters of purpose. And she said never before has there been such a strong inner integration between the workers in all the different fields of activity in the world today. So this is for our encouragement and our hope. We are lucky to be living here on earth at this time, in this period of such incredible transformation and change. It's a confusing time because we don't know the direction in which we are headed exactly. We can't see the goal towards which we are working. But it is definitely a very fruitful and creative period. And we have everything present in our existence right now, whatever our circumstances might be, to enable us to take our next step forward in consciousness. We don't need a distant field in which to learn. We dwell in a world of force and energy. Right now, we wield force and energy right now in the way we handle our thoughts, our emotions, our physical activities. We do so 24 hours of the day. So the field of training is our present circumstances and our particular environment, whatever it might be, right here, right now. This is the place not only where we should begin, but it is exactly the right place for each of us. Living as we do on earth in a world of form makes it possible to ask what I think are the ultimate questions, at least for the present state of my consciousness. Those questions being, what is the nature of reality? And what is the purpose of life in form? We can ask those questions because we are here on earth, living in form. And while doing so, we have the opportunity to begin our search for the center that exists within the form aspect, that center being the soul. Not for the sake of finding peace and release, but to understand the unity of life, the fusion of inner and outer, of form and spirit. Here on earth, we have the opportunity to develop awareness of all parts of the Father's kingdom, and thus awaken consciousness on all levels. That's why we're here. I think it was Blavatsky who said, God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. When one has begun even a bit to find that center, he can then begin to function as a magical worker and as a transmitter of purpose and of pure spiritual energy. He can then take his place in the stream of life that manifests through all the kingdoms of earth. So our goal isn't to escape earth and the world of form, but to be here as transmitters of spiritual forces to the lives that exist in all the kingdoms. This is the true magical work of the soul. So to sum up, I'd like to leave you with one final passage from the writings of Alice Bailey. It comes from her book on white magic, which is called A Treatise on White Magic. And to me, it expresses a realization that is so beautiful. Every time I read it, I am re-inspired by it, and I hope you will be too. She wrote that every human being who reaches the goal of life and wisdom automatically has a field of influence which extends both up and down, and which reaches both inwards to the source of light and outwards into the fields of darkness. When he is thus attained, he will become a conscious center of life-giving force, and will be so without effort. He will stimulate, energize, and vivify to fresh efforts all lives that he contacts, be they his fellow aspirants, or an animal, or a flower. He will act as a transmitter of light in the darkness. He will dispel the glamour around him and let in the radiance of reality. I hope some of these thoughts might have prompted recognitions in your own minds that you would now feel free and compelled to share with all of us so that we could have a real discussion tonight as a group, as fellow souls in search of greater light. We have a microphone, and if you have a comment, please put up your hand so that we can come around with the microphone and be sure to catch your every word.
Sarah, I have a question.
Yes.
You talked about the left hand and the right hand path.
Mm-hmm.
Is it always so clear cut, or is there a grey, fuzzy middle where people can get sort of called grey magicians, or, neither completely one or the other? Yeah.
I'd never thought about that, but I imagine most people are not completely selfish and evil in intention. Probably many people are a mixture of white and black in the sense of occasionally giving in to self-serving efforts to manipulate circumstances and forms to serve their own needs, often with the amazing ability to rationalize and justify. And I think if we all watch ourselves, we can see a little bit of that working through us in our less grand moments. But there are apparently a few people who are totally dedicated to the left-hand path. I believe they are few in number, but they're extremely powerful simply because they're so one-pointed. They're not confused or swayed by any consideration of the oneness of humanity or the oneness of life. It is pure selfish energy combined with intelligence and quite an amount of spiritual development. I think the writings of Alice Bailey say that up through the third initiation, which is quite advanced, one has the opportunity to follow either the right or the left-hand path. So it's not just a very unevolved soul. Yes.